giving me this honor. I'm trying my best to fulfill my role as a poet laureate. And today's program, of course, is to fulfill my role. The purpose of the poetry, I mean, of the poet laureate, is to promote the literary arts, especially poetry, to highlight the diversity and uniqueness of Laredo, and of course, the greatest, I think, uniqueness and beauty of Laredo is our bilingual and bicultural community. So that is why I'm doing all my presentations with poems in both English and Spanish to highlight that beautiful um, culture that we have. And we should be so proud that we can manage both languages and understand them. And if you, I'm already inviting you for Tuesday, June 1st, September 7th, and October 5th. June 5th, 1st will be for fathers in poetry. The September will be reflections of life on the border. And the Tuesday, October 5th would be writing calaveras. So maybe in November we can have an open mic, how we say it, and do some calaveras for November. And as always, those of you who have been here in my other workshops, I always like to tell you that I've been a teacher for such a long time, and I've always promoted poetry. And here I have Martin High School, where Mando graduated from, but this is one of my winners in the Mother's Day certamen para ti, madre mía, from periódico El Mañana. This is 1980. And you can see it's a newspaper clipping, and I just guessed by the dress and by the hair I had that it was about 1980. Okay, and because it was very close to this, also you can see here A Mi Madre. This is a poem that Cecilia Torres, one of my students, wrote, and it was published by Macmillan and Company in 19. They wrote it in 80, and the book came out in 1982. I'm very proud. 4 of my students' poems came out in that textbook. And of course, our prompt for today, I used to give it at the end, but now I like to give it at the beginning because as you listen to the poems, I want you to be inspired by the poems. And of course, for May, we'll be celebrating our mothers. And I'm going to give you a little anecdote of my teaching and why I say who are present in our lives, who are absent, or another person who has been a mother figure to us. When I started teaching at Martin High School, I was very, very young, right out of college. And, and I thought I knew it all, like 22-year-olds do and 23-year-olds. And we started writing for mothers. And one of my students got up and left, and she was in tears. And what happened? Why did she leave? And one of my students said, well, her mother died last trimester or semester. It was either trimester, and I had no idea. And so I was very careful to then include absent mothers. We can also honor the absent mothers. And then one day, when I was going over the metaphors and how you can compare your mothers, one of the simplest is in poetry is a metaphor. One of the girls right in front of me said, en español, no la comparo ni con una perra, porque las perras no abandonan a sus hijos. And I almost froze. And of course, I asked her to come outside to the hallway. And I said, why do you say that? And then she told me her sad story. Her mother had left them, and then her paternal grandmother had raised them. So from then on, I started my Mother's Day writing with a little therapy session explaining mothers are human. They're not all perfect. They're not perfect as we would like them to be because we're human, and no human is perfect. And so we can write about our present mother, our absent, for some reason they are gone, or for the substitute mother. So, and I'm glad to see that today's poems, some of them are for another person, who has been like a mother figure to us. So, or we can also choose to write about the challenges of motherhood, the pains, the joys, etc. But it's to celebrate mothers. So, uh, I am not, well, en español celebramos a nuestras madres presentes, ausentes o suplentes. Y también podemos escribir sobre los retos, sufrimientos, dolores, gozos, etcétera, de la maternidad. Aquí está Patricia Costa y María Solís. No sé, Patricia siempre le gusta escribir en español, así que es para ti, Patricia Costa. Sí, no sé si mi colega Patricia González también quiera escribir para ya sea presente, ausente o suplente, o sobre la maternidad. Y ya que algunas, Patricia es madre, las dos Patricias, no sé si María Gómez, María Solís es mamá. Iliana también, Iliana quizá quiere escribir en español. Sí.
Sí, tengo dos hijos.
Sí,
Sí,
bueno,
soy mamá.
entonces usted va a querer escribir. Y tienes dos hijos, ya eres mamá, es cierto, es cierto. Así.
Sí.
And then I always give you tips to write. And these are my tips. I'm sure Mando and Mary Sue and Lucinda and Patricia can share some of the tips they have to write poetry, to encourage their students throughout the years. My first tip is to, if you want to write, you have to read. You have to read. And in our case, also to listen. Nowadays, there's so many podcasts on TV or podcasts and on the internet. I say my age. I forget the internet has a lot of the podcasts, and then also respond to poems you like. And I've seen um, like Lucinda, the first poem she's going to read about Edna St. Vincent Millay, talks about the courage her mother had. You can also write about something, some virtue your mother had, or something you admire about your mother. And also it talks about a brooch that she inherited. And I remember Lucinda in her classes would ask us to bring something that meant that was important to us, and we could write about it. So this is responding to a poem. Number 3, keep a journal. All my students kept a journal. Remember, Liana, tus diarios, journal. And I'm sure the Martin High kids remember we always kept journals, and journals for poetry, so they'll help you read. And of course, use images with the 5 senses. This I also learned from Lucinda, my teacher, my mentor. It has so much better, you can describe with the senses. And of course, metaphors, similes are so important. You compare, you contrast, write free verse, read your verses out loud, because poetry is like a song and needs to be heard. Poetry is not to be read silently only. You need to hear it because it has rhythm, not necessarily rhyme, but it does have a rhythm to it. So also the rhythm you like, there's different rhythms, like slam poetry, different from lyrical, but just as beautiful. But if you like slam poetry, well, listen to slam poetry so you can write slam poetry. And poetry writing is a craft. I think we all agree on that. So we need to practice it. We need to be adventurous, be daring, but above all, be you. You have your own voice. And no matter what people tell you, your voice is what counts. Okay? Because so many people will try to, well, that's not good enough. Well, I'm not Edna St. Vincent Millay. I'm Rosa Maria. So I write like Rosa Maria writes, and I write my, I wish I were Edna St. Vincent. Well, no, not really. She had a terrible life, a very, very difficult life. And then the most important, revise, revise, revise. And of course, when it's your turn, my poets here in my workshop, you can also give us tips if you so like. Okay. And now we get to the fun part, the reading of the poems. And the poems, I want you to be inspired or to, respond to these poems. Edna St. Vincent Millay, wonderful, very important poet of the beginning of the 20th century, the first woman or one of the first women who received the Pulitzer Prize. Remember, before women, well, we didn't, not we write, but it was hard for women to get recognized for their literary work. That's why many women would use a man's name. She used a man's name. I think she just would use Vincent Millay. She would not use Edna for a while. But anyway, then Edgar Allan Poe writes about his mother, but when Lucinda will read it for us, you'll find out it's really his mother-in-law. So I thought that was very beautiful. And I let Lucinda. Now, Lucinda, thank you so much. I've been telling you Lucinda was my writing teacher. And today I talked to Carlos Flores and said, thanks to the South Texas Writing Project, I write in English. I had never written in English. I didn't think I could. I was a Spanish teacher, but thanks to Lucinda, who is my teacher at LC, it was part of LC and TAMIU. And she's my mentor, but more importantly, she's my friend. And I'm very happy she agreed to tell us a little bit what she can about Edna St. Vincent Millay and about Edgar Allan Poe and read her poems, their poems, excuse me. And we go to you want to tell us a little bit about them or just we go straight to the poem?
Oh, well, you put some lovely information on the, so let me just kind of go through that. She was also an activist, which was very important that she was living because we wouldn't be where we are today as women without feminist activists. As you said, she won the Pulitzer Prize and she also won the Robert Frost Prize, which is really amazing. But anyway, let me just read her poem because I think it's a powerful one because it talks about courage and how we often feel we lack it. The courage that my mother had went with her, and it is still. Rock from New England quarried, now granite in Granite Hill. The golden brooch my mother wore, she left to wear. I have no thing I treasure more, yet it is something I could spare. Oh, if instead she left me things she took into the grave, the courage like that rock, which she has no more need of, and I have. It's a short poem, but it's powerful in the sense of wishing that she had the courage of the granite rock that her, I love that part of it.
Yes, me too. It was from New England, quarried. I love the metaphor.
Yes, yes, reminds of Robert Frost in the sense of the stone and rocks and the topography of New England as well. And his poem, as you mentioned, is more about his mother than his mother, and I think that's interesting because he says to my mother, and he's really about both mothers in this poem. He says, because I feel that in the heavens above,
Ooh, we lost you, Lucinda.
I think it's your internet, Miss Dan.
Yes. Oh my goodness. I'm sorry, Lucinda, we can't hear you. Oh my goodness, she lost. Yeah, it's the internet. Lucinda, I'm so sorry. Are you there?
I see that she's reading. I don't think she can hear us.
Oh, she cannot hear us. Yes, she's reading. Oh my goodness. She's probably telling us how, but, ay, ay, ay. Ay, Lucinda, we cannot hear you. We can't hear you. We can't hear you. No. We can't hear you. I don't know how to say it in sign language, or can you hear me? Not if you can hear me. No.
I
Hello,
don't think she can hear us.
Lucinda. No, I'm sorry, we lost her. And now I think, yes, we lost her. Well, I'm sorry, but let me read it. I wouldn't. She has such a beautiful voice. That's also, besides being my friend and mentor, she has this voice that I love, that voice. But then I'll read it to you. Is because I feel that in the heavens above, the angels whispering to one another can find, ah, Lucinda, there you are. I'm reading it again because we couldn't hear it. Yes. It's a non so devotional as I can't hear you. So sorry. Anyway, guys, my dear participants, he is talking. This is Edgar Allan Poe, the greatest writer of the 19th century. And he talks about his mother-in-law. And I hate how in the common, the comics and many people make fun of mothers-in-law, when really, I mean, if you love your wife or your husband, you should love his mother or her mother, because you love your partner. So I love this poem for that reason, you know, and thus are dearer than the mother I knew, by that infinity with which my wife was dearer to my soul than its soul life. I just love this poem. And I'm sure Lucinda not only said it much better, but gave us insights into this poem. Okay, I apologize, but we can read it later, or maybe she'll read it later. Okay, now I would read two poems in Spanish, and now we're going to the in English first, and now we're going into the Spanish version. And I told you about Martin High School participating in Mother's Day, and I was there from 1969 to 83, or 68 to 83. And then in 83, I went to Cigarroa High School. I was one of the teachers that opened the school, and I was the department head for the foreign language department for 24 years there. And ahora me voy a ir en español. Siempre celebrábamos el Día de las Madres. Y Iliana está aquí conmigo, que es una de las chicas que está aquí recitando, y nos va a recitar en un momento una poesía como la declamaba ella en aquellas épocas en nuestras celebraciones. Aquí tenemos un programa de invitación para el Día de las Madres. Siempre usábamos esta belleza de grabado de la madre con su niño, y ahorita la van a ver. Teníamos muchos premios, por eso se llenaba, ¿verdad, Ileana? Se llenaba el gimnasio. Teníamos más de 1000 gentes que iban al gimnasio. Los conserjes o janitors, los conserjes nos decían que después de los juegos de básquetbol del gimnasio, los días de madres eran los que tenían más gente que iba, ¿verdad? A verlos. Había cantos, había declamaciones, y lo más especial era que los alumnos de cada uno de los grados de español leía su composición ganadora. De todo español 1, el que ganaba el primer lugar, la leía su mamá. Del español 2, la leía su mamá. O de la señora Gámez, o de la señorita Aguirre, después Granado. El mejor alumno de la señora Granado leía. Entonces, no había el público los teníamos llorando, porque estaba muy emotivo siempre el Día de las Madres. Así que Y una de las poesías que decíamos en Día de las Madres es esta, que creo que no está completa, Ileana, y no te dije. No sé si te la mandé, ¿verdad? La tienes en tu...
Sí, aquí la tengo.
La que te mandé, porque creo que
Sí.
esta nos batallamos mucho para a veces ponerla. Esta Ileana es la misma Ileana que tenemos aquí en pantalla. La tenemos aquí de 17 años y ahora tiene un poquito más. Se graduó como el 97, 98, ¿verdad, Ileana? Entonces tiene unos poquitos años más. Y
Solo poquitos.
solo poquito, sí. Y es profesora y hasta supervisora, ¿verdad? De la educación bilingüe para el Laredo Independent School District o United. Laredo.
Laredo.
Laredo. Así que nos da mucho gusto que esta misma chica que participaba en mis concursos y en mis programas de declamación nos va a declamar y ahora van a ver, este es para la madre ausente, for the mother who has died. Preciosa, preciosa, esta de las más bellas que he leído. Adelante, Ileana, gracias por estar con nosotros.
Muchas gracias por la invitación. Buenas tardes a todos. Y les voy a leer, medio declamar, la poesía de Mi madre ausente, de Eduardo Reyes. A mi madre ausente. Benditas entrañas que me dieron vida, manos cariñosas que me dieron pan. Cómo se hizo nada lo que fuera todo, cómo se hizo angustia lo que fue cantar. Mi madre era joven, la casa era vieja, mullidos los lechos, sabroso el llantar. Éramos pequeños, teníamos entonces el alma de luna, de flor, de cristal. Pasada mi vida soñando en las hadas o escribiendo cartas para Baltasar. ¿Cuántas veces, cuántas, con mano traviesa despojé de rosas el mejor rosal? Enturbié la fuente, dejé que volara el canario, lindo como un madrigal. Y lloré más tarde por aquel reproche, que era al mismo tiempo ternura y piedad. Oh, mi madrecita grácil y morena, que tan suavemente me enseñó a rezar, que prendía en las noches lámparas azules y en las tardes amasaba el pan. Siempre diligente, siempre compasiva, cuidando de todo, dispuesta a ofrendar por sus macetas el riego piadoso, por sus canarios el lido nupcial. Sin casi sentirlo, nos tornamos hombres. Nubló nuestras frentes surcos de ansiedad. Sollozamos mucho, como se solloza por los que se mueren, por los que se van. Unos se murieron, otros se marcharon, y yo oí a mi madre rezar y rezar. Sus cabellos negros se volvieron blancos y vistió de luto su serenidad. Se enfermó su cuerpo con un mal sin nombre que ninguno supo conocer quizás, y las santas manos se le retorcieron como los sarmientos que envejecen ya. Cuando aquella noche nos llamó a su vera para bendecirnos y morir en paz, yo, que la adoraba con ternura inmensa, como débil niño, le grité: ¡Mamá! Sé que está en el cielo, porque fue su vida toda transparencia, toda suavidad. Y aunque no escuchemos su plegaria ardiente, ruega por nosotros en la inmensidad. Benditas entrañas que me dieron vida, manos cariñosas que me dieron pan. Como se hizo nada lo que fuera todo, como se hizo angustia lo que fue cantar. Muchas gracias. Miss Deyano, no la escuchamos.
Miss Diana, es que I mute you, so unmute yourself, please. On the bottom where it says the
Oh,
video.
yes. Okay.
Okay.
Well,
Sorry, es que I muted, so it won't be
yes,
interrupting.
thank you. Thank you. I thank you. I didn't know. And now you know, after listening to Ileana, it brings back so many memories from Cigarroa High School and from Martin High School, Armando Lopez. You remember when my students would recitar, declamar in that manner, and it was so touching, so very touching. And I was always also telling you that people from the community, from the neighborhood in Cigarroa would be calling the school asking, when is the Mother's Day program? Because they like to go and listen to poems in Spanish. It's a very traditional way in our Spanish speaking communities to declamar, you know, not only say a poem, but with this deep meaning. It doesn't carry that much in English. It's different. Border slam is a little bit like it. Amanda will tell us more. Pero bueno, I'll go back. Muchísimas gracias, Ileana, por recordarnos estos bellos momentos y esta bella poesía en español. Y ahora seguimos en español, porque siempre tenemos cuando menos dos en español, ¿sí? Tenemos a la activista, otra activista política que luchó contra Somoza y su profesor era Cardenal, el Ernesto Cardenal. Ahora es profesora en la Universidad de California de Santa Cruz. Reside en San Francisco, California. Y para leernos el poema y platicarnos un poquito si ella quiere, de que le gustó, etcétera, es mi colega y amiga y colega del doctorado, la doctora Patricia González, que es sociolingüista. Ella sacó su doctorado de TAMU, College Station, y ahora es adjunct faculty en TAMU, como fui yo muchos años, y fuimos colegas de doctorado y de TAMU también. Mucho gusto en tenerte aquí, Patricia.
Gracias, buenas noches a todos y gracias, Rosa María, por la invitación. Es un gusto, obviamente, leer lo mismo en inglés y en español. El poema que se movió la filmina, por cierto.
Sí, lo tengo en español.
Sí.
¿Quieres hacer esta?
Es que cambiaste a otra filmina.
Chihuahua. ¿Quieres?
Ahí estoy, ahí está.
Ok.
Muy bien. Este poema, escrito por Daisy Zamora. Su trabajo cubre temas de la vida cotidiana, habla sobre derechos humanos en su obra, sobre temas políticos y obviamente feminista también. Entonces, el poema es diferente a lo que esperamos. Es un llamado de atención, como decías al principio,
sí.
Que no todas las madres a veces demostramos el amor de la misma manera. Hay muchas formas de demostrar el amor a los hijos. Y ella escribe en Día de las Madres y se lo dedica a su hija e hijos. No dudo que les hubiera gustado tener una linda mamá de anuncio comercial, con marido adorable y niños felices. Siempre parece risueña, y si algún día llora, lo hace una vez apagados reflectores y cámaras, y con el rostro limpio de maquillaje. Pero ya que nacieron de mí, debo decirles, desde que era pequeña como ustedes, ansiaba ser yo misma. Y para una mujer eso es difícil. Hasta mi ángel guardián renunció a cuidarme cuando lo supo. No puedo asegurarles que conozco bien el rumbo. Muchas veces me equivoco. Mi vida más bien ha sido como una dolorosa travesía, vadeando escollos, sorteando tempestades, desollando fantasmales sirenas que me invitan al pasado, sin brújula ni bitácora adecuadas, que me indiquen la ruta, pero avanzo. Avanzo aferrada a la esperanza de algún puerto lejano al que ustedes, hijos míos, estoy segura, arribarán una mañana después de consumado mi naufragio.
Wow. Y lo leíste precioso, Patricia. Sí, esta no es una madre como la que sale en los anuncios comerciales
No.
o como la que nos leyó, declamó Ileana, ni como la suegra de Edgar Allan Poe, ni con el valor que tenía la mamá. Bueno, quizá el valor sí, porque tiene el valor de ser sí misma, ¿no?
Sí.
Este poema me lo recomendó Mando López y me encantó. Yo en realidad no había oído de Daisy Zamora, no es tan conocida en las letras académicas, ¿no? Conocemos a la otra nicaragüense, ay, se me olvidó ahorita el nombre, que estudiamos en TAMU.
No, hay tantas.
Hay centroamericanas, ¿verdad? Pero a
Sí.
Daisy Zamora yo no la había estudiado, pero me encantó.
Oh, sí.
En inglés, porque después esto se está grabando al público, no sé cuánto público tengamos, pero para que la lean también, qué fuerte es, ¿no? Y nos dice que las madres somos humanas y no somos perfectas, ¿verdad?
Exacto.
Pero tratamos lo mejor y con eso ya es bastante, ya, ¿verdad? Porque bueno, y ahora vamos a escuchar poemas por now I have to go into English. I love my Spanish so much. Now we have poems about mothers from our own, very own Laredo poets. And my first guest is Mary Sue Galindo. I'm so glad you're here, Mary Sue. She's a retired English professor at Laredo College for 16 years, who is now a full-time farmer and rancher. Listen, I think this is awesome, Mary Lou. She and her family own and manage Palo Blanco Farm and bring to Laredo Farm to table specialty like microgreens, sprouts, herbs, edible flowers, and farm fresh eggs. I want to know where she is, where she sells those things. You have to tell us more about this, Mary Sue. She loves tending to get her chickens and keeping the gardens going. The poem in today's presentation was published in the anthology Entre Guadalupe y Malinche by Inés Hernandez and our own Dr. Norma Cantú. She is the author also of a bilingual children's book, I See Watermelon Sandia Fria, and it gives me great pleasure to present to you Mary Sue Galindo, who is going to read her poem and also tell us a little bit about her poem, why she wrote it, and also give us tips if you want to, Mary Sue. Where are you?
Okay. Can you hear me? Can
Yes.
you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I wrote this poem in 1983 to honor my grandmother. She never had a home for herself. She lived with my great-grandparents. They had 9 children, and she was the oldest, so she was always helping her to raise her kids. And when she got married, she lost her first child, and then she lost her husband to tuberculosis. And my mother was still a baby when her father died. And so she went back to the homestead because a woman couldn't live by herself. And then when my mother got married and my father, gave her her home, my grandmother came and lived with us. And she represents an extra pair of hands in the house that was there to offer love to us. And so in memory of my departed grandmother, Juanita Perez Mejia. And we called her, she didn't want us to call her Juanita, we called her Jonah. When I think of you, Jonah, I remember what a strong woman you were. Never afraid of hard work, never afraid to speak your mind, never afraid to put yourself last. When I think of you, Jonah, I remember your soft brown hands, tireless, siempre trabajando, en la pizca, limpiando casas, tendiendo camas, lavando trastes, amasando, haciéndole la lucha 7 days a week for a lifetime. When I think of you, Jonah, I remember your labor of love served unconditionally with frijoles guisados, tortillas, buñuelos, dulces, pasteles y un cafecito para saborear tu trabajo de tus manos. When I think of you, Jonah, I remember your healing hands, sobando, sobando el dolor de un mal golpe, sobando, sobando, un corazón herido, sobando, sobando, sobando. I think of you, Jonah. I remember your final moments, how your knotted hands relaxed, extended unto your creator as you journeyed home at last. Adiós, abuelita, madre, hermana, tía, cuñada, descansa, que ya merecen descansar esas manitas. Thank you.
Oh my God, it's so beautiful, Mary Sue. Thank you. Thank you. It's and you started crying. Yes, of course. Beautiful grandmother. I don't blame you for crying a little bit, but this is a wonderful poem that our students, can serve as an example of what we can write about our grandmothers. And of course, everything she did. And I love all the food. We always have to talk about food in Mexican tradition, guisados, buñuelos, everything, very important. Food is sustenance. And thank you. You want to give us some tips on how to write poetry?
I think you pretty much, have covered, read, practice, read aloud, find your own voice. I think, the senses, the figurative language, I think you've kind of captured the essentials. And I
Yes.
think that's what they are. And the other thing is just do it.
Yes, it's a craft, so we need to practice. And hopefully some of you would want to practice today with us. Well, thank you very much. And now we have our,
Thank you for inviting me.
I thank you for being here with us. And now our illustrious poet who writes a poet a day for pandemic and whose birthday is today. I just found out in Facebook. Mando Lopez, thank you for being here with us on your birthday. And he has been, we appreciate a lot. He's a terrific poet. You're going to love him. He's been practicing attorney for 37 years. He's happily married to Mary Lou Mendiola, wonderful, my colleague from Cigarroa High School, now curriculum coordinator for the United Independent School District. They have 3 adult children, Mara, Armando, and Alejandro, and are the proud grandparents of Melina and Romina. And Mando always brings his family into the poetry, and I love that about him. His poetry has been published almost by the Laredo Times. He didn't put that here. And in Facebook, I read him every day. He has written over 400, I think it's 410 today for the pandemic. And it's been published by the Guadalupe Cultural Arts Center. And he has been a poet with the Laredo Border Slam since 2012 and performed with Laredo Border Slam in Laredo, San Antonio, Houston, Tulsa, and Baton Rouge. Here is so happy. I'm so happy to have our birthday boy today, Mr. Lopez, Mando, our dear Mando.
Well, thank you. I just wanted to say that I've been very fortunate to have been connected to a lot of you over the years. A lot of people don't know, but Mary Sue and I went to UT together. We met there because we were from different parts of the state. And one of my favorite stories is how we formed a team to play what was the version of the College Bowl, I guess. And Mary Sue was in Plan 2, which was for all the brainiacs. And then we put together some other Laredoans, Steven Fierros, who was a valedictorian, Israel Gutierrez, who was a valedictorian, and me. And so Mary Sue and I have always joked with each other, nos llevamos pesado, como dicen. And so she said, I know why I'm here, and I know why the valedictorian's here, but why is Mando here? And, and then they gave us a question in the event, and they wanted to know what Donny Osmond's middle name was. And so all the brainiacs look at each other and they didn't know, and I knew it was Clark. And I said, that's what you have me here for. I pick up all the garbage, the trivia stuff. So I'm not as deep as a lot of the folks out there, but I have fun doing this. But anyway, I've known Mary Sue for a long time. I love her poetry. She's come to Slam and just picked it up. First time she came in, she won first place. So I was glad to hear her read, and I loved her poetry. And so I say we go back a long way. She's a powerful writer. And so I'm going to give you the tip that she didn't give you that she does. She's fearless. She says it like it is. And I've heard some of her poetry. Y no tiene pelos en la lengua. So, if you ever want to, when we get her together, and when all this is over and we start doing some of these readings in public, I want her to read some of her political stuff and her feminist poetry, because it is right on, and it goes straight to the insecurity of misogyny sometimes. And she's been writing like that all of my life. So I'm proud to consider her a friend. This poem I just wrote for I've got to cover all the bases on Mother's Day now. So I got a mom, a wife, and a daughter who are mothers. And so I wrote this poem, and I'm glad to present it today. It's called To the Mothers. This starts with my mother, but it goes back to the ages, to the mothers before us, those who were our sages. I celebrate my mother, raised in a Jim Crow world. She challenged preconceptions, made their heads swirl. Came to this border, settled in its ways, but raised her children ready to face real world frays. I celebrate my wife, who made me a father. We stood together, parenting was never a bother. Forged our own folklore, our round table traditions, where all express their opinions without inhibitions. Mara is now a mother. She has brought us a blessing, a kind and sweet granddaughter with a mind and soul so impressing. We watch their path. We give thanks for their presence. We know that they will instill the family creed and its essence. Happy Mother's Day to mothers everywhere, to grandmothers, aunts, to one and to all. Thanks for responding to the Mother's Day call. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mando. And like I was saying before, you always include your family or your everyday experiences. And I love that about your poems, Mando.
And what I wanted to say was that, I think Mary Sue covers this, our parents lived through, and grandparents lived through some really rough times. Mm-hmm. And so like my mother is from Robstown, and she wasn't raised here in Laredo where, where we don't face a lot of the discrimination that people like she faced. She was raised in Robstown, where they had elementary schools for the three races. And, and then they all come together in high school, with exception of the blacks who were sent to another high school in Corpus. And so my mother doesn't talk about those times to other people, but to me, she's told me and so that's why I talk about her Jim Crow world, because she recognizes all of those tactics and all of the things that used to happen. And she had experiences like that. And so I really feel it's important for my kids and everybody else to know that grandma was involved in struggles that we read about sometimes here, but we didn't go through. And so I throw that in there so people can say, what's that Jim Crow allusion? And I'm able to talk to my kids and hopefully my grandkids about her stuff. So anyway, thanks for inviting. I really enjoyed presenting.
Thanks. You're invited for several others, because she has poems for Father's Day, for the borders, and we want you to include the one about the mixing of the languages. Remember that in the open, that too. So you're a guest, and everybody's invited. If you have poems, please come and read them with us. If not as a guest, then as a volunteer later on. And of course, now it's my turn to read one about mothers. And this, I'm talking about my mother who has been gone since 92. And estoy en español. Tenemos dos en español. Consejos de mamá, como yo le puse, y es de febrero de este año. Y dice, anoche soñé a mamá, pero fue más que eso. Pareciera que me vino a visitar. Sentí el peso en el colchón cuando a mi lado se sentó. Su aliento podía sentir. Sus manos olían a ajo y a cebolla cuando solía cocinar. Cuando un problema me agobia, ella siempre ahí está. Anoche me vino a platicar, muy amena, muy serena, con esos ojos pispiretas que cerraba y encendía su entusiasmo al demostrar. Su visita de mucho me sirvió. Fue un consuelo en mi diario caminar. No importa la edad, siempre necesitamos un consejo de mamá. No desaproveches esta oportunidad que la vida te ofrece, pues no siempre se te da. Ya no supe más. Entre sueños la sentí, entre sueños se me fue. Pero la satisfacción ahí quedó. Su consejo lo seguí. No desaproveches esta oportunidad que la vida te ofrece, pues no siempre se te da. Hace muchos años que mamá murió, pero siempre en mi memoria está. Y cómo le agradezco que cuando más la necesito, me venga a visitar. Thank you. Lo soñé. This is a happening. It happened to me. And it's very comforting to have had a mother who was always there for us. And now I have another one. Al principio yo les mostré el muchacho de Martin High School de más o menos 1980, que ganó un segundo lugar en el certamen del Nuevo Laredo del mañana. Y se los quiero decir porque siempre yo decía, les decía, usen metáforas para describir a su mamá. Y les gustó mucho en Nuevo Laredo. Y no sé si alguien conoce a Orlando Martínez. Por favor, díganle. No,
Orlando's a police officer.
really, you
Yes.
know him. Well,
Yeah,
tell him oh my goodness, I didn't know where he was. I should have asked you, Mando.
Yeah. He's a football player and he's also in high school, but he was a police officer.
So would it be 1980 a correct time? Was it
Around that time, yes.
wrong time? Okay. I just guessed because I cut out the newspaper and then I didn't put a date. Ella. I thought I would have a good memory forever and I would remember. No, 1980 to now, that's more than 40 years. Well, I have to look him up and tell him. And this is a beautiful poem. I love the way he described his mother. And dice, para describir a mi madre, tengo que compararlo con la naturaleza, como el viento que nos acaricia, como la lluvia que nos refresca. Así es mi madre. Como el florecimiento de primavera, como la cordialidad de una llama. Así es mi madre. Como un relámpago cuando anda enojada, como una tormenta cuando anda deprisa. Así es mi madre. Para entenderla, hay que tener paciencia, como ella tiene conmigo. Y se sacó segundo lugar en un certamen muy, muy reñido en Nuevo Laredo. Así que si lo ves, Mando, le dices, o a lo mejor lo busco yo para decirle que hemos leído su poema aquí.
That's when I saw your PowerPoint, I said, hey, here's Orlando. He used to be a football player and he was the quietest guy in the world. I should have known he was a poet.
Yeah, he was very quiet and muy bien portado también, muy lindo. Bueno, yo tuve tantos años en high school y les puedo decir, como siempre les digo a los que me conocen, fueron unos años muy lindos. Mucha gente dice, en high school, años lindos. Sí, en Martin, ¿verdad? Eran tiempos muy bonitos con Colonel Flores, Colonel Hine, Miss Moore, todos en paz descansen. Sí. Y otra vez, now we are ready to read time to write our prompt. and time to write about our mothers, and just, remember the tips to write poetry. Like, to write anything, you have to read and to listen, because language is imitation. And you respond to poems if you like the one Mando wrote, or like the one Mary Sue wrote, beautiful, about the grandmother and the mothers in Mando's life. That's responding to poems. You write your own, and of course, the rest I already wrote it. But now I'm going to give you 10 minutes, and Miss Roxanne is going to play Mozart, because I couldn't play it for here. But we're going to time for 10 minutes, and then we're going to ask for volunteers to read your poem about mothers, the prompt that I gave you. Okay? Any questions before we start? Remember, volunteers, you need to sign with Roxanne in the chat. Okay, it's 6:58. I'm going to put my timer. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. And of course, Lucinda is from Georgetown, right, Lucinda? Round Rock. Okay, Mando, you go first.
Okay,
Birthday boy.
so I'm going to give you a different perspective on mothers. So
Okay, give us a different perspective on
this
mothers.
poem is called La Mamá de Tarzan. Okay. Mira nomás, se cree la mamá de Tarzan. I remember the first time I heard this. If the king of the apes was the alpha, La Raza taught you that there was an ultimate. This was part of my continuing education. I was trying to connect the Darwinian dots. Our Lady of Guadalupe School was my petri dish. I learned of the muted power de la Madre Maria. When I transitioned to public school, I learned how to both avoid and start a war. It was a simple battle cry, the most unforgivable insult. It sounded something like this: Chile tomate. I tried to understand the fixation on this insult. I had hints of the exaltation of our mothers. This battle cry revealed a muted devotion. No one should ever belittle a mother. Don Americo said, los hombres cantan y luego chotean. They communicate cautiously and they blast out thunderbolts of truth. Just slow it down and listen and laugh. So though you may be Tarzan, you may be the king of the jungle. Remember, your mother made you. Y sí, es la mamá de Tarzan.
Thank you so much, Mando. Qué bárbaro. Te avientas. That's
You.
in Laredo slang, te avientas.
Okay, thank you.
And I always tell you that we love your poems, Mando. Keep
Thank
up your craft. It was wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you, and go celebrate your birthday.
And thank you
And
very much.
say hello to all your family.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Sí, Mara, Mary Lou, Sissy.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And now who's going to read her poem?
We
No,
have Cynthia Gallardo.
Cynthia Gallardo, our ever faithful Cynthia Gallardo. We miss Jamie Cross. We have to call her and see what happened. You know, the 14-year-old Cynthia, who always comes and reads her poems. You know that, right? You've been with us. And
We need to
Cynthia
know.
also. Yeah. Okay, Cynthia, read us your poem.
Okay, so this poem is from my grandma. She passed away when I was in high school, but she inspired me, especially for her love of community service. So it's in Spanish. I'm going to read it.
Good.
It's called Mi hermosa abuelita. Mi hermosa abuelita, mi corazón te habla, pero no estás aquí. Mi mente te busca, pero no te encuentro. Siempre recordaré tu amabilidad, tu sencillez, tu paciencia y tu amor. Recordaré cuánto me ayudabas y cómo creías en mí y en mis sueños. Tú cambiaste mi vida. Con tu apoyo, yo crecí como persona. Eras mi mejor amiga, mi cómplice de las buenas obras. Siempre tendrás un lugar especial en mi corazón. Mi mente siempre pensará en nuestros recuerdos. Extraño tus abrazos, tu sonrisa, tu apoyo y tu amor incondicional. Que tengas una bonita noche. Por favor, no te olvides de mí. Y tal vez algún día te veré en el paraíso o en mis sueños. Buenas noches y te mando un fuerte abrazo y un beso en donde te encuentras. Hasta pronto y siempre te recordaré.
Beautiful, beautiful, Cynthia. Thank you. Roxanne, you have the list of who signed up first?
Yes.
Yes, who's next?
Patricia Costa.
Patricia, my student from Martin High School. My poet forever.
Hola, ¿qué tal? ¿Cómo están todos?
Buenas tardes.
Buenas tardes, gracias por invitar. Y, mi poema es un poquito diferente, pero está escrito con el corazón, eso sí. Espero les guste. Título, ¿te perdono? ¿Cómo quisiera decir que te perdono? Pero sé que al hacerlo mentiría. Me hiciste mucho daño desde niña. Le robaste a mi niñez la alegría. Me humillabas y golpeabas diariamente. Y nadie me pudo o quiso defender. Crecí con tristeza en mi alma y llena de amargura en mi ser. No entendía el porqué de los castigos, ni tampoco el porqué de tu desamor. Solo sé que sentía un gran miedo, sentía rabia, dolor y rencor. Alguna vez quise terminar mi vida y tan solo 8 años yo tenía. Mas algo me detuvo y no pude, y seguí sufriendo día a día. Hoy al escribir estas líneas, te juro que intento perdonarte. No quiero llevar tanta amargura, ni con tanto dolor recordarte. Hoy, después de tantos años, quiero ya liberar mi alma. Te perdono, madre mía, te perdono. Podré ya vivir en paz y en calma.
Patricia, Patricia, qué fuerte, qué fuerte. Habíamos hablado antes de esto. Siento mucho, pero como te decía, relationships are not easy. Now I'm going to turn a little bit into English for my English-speaking friends. And every time I would have the Mother's Day compositions in Martin High School, and you were not all the time. When I was young, I didn't know to do it, but after a while, after I became a little bit older, and then I realized that not all mothers are perfect, like Daisy Zamora said, in her poem. And I didn't know this. I knew your mom, and I didn't know this, but we had talked. But anyway, what I was saying is I would always have a little therapy session before, because things like this would happen and if this isn't mothers, I can just hear for Father's Day, because Father's Day is, we never wrote for Father's Day because it was in June. We were already out of school, but I can imagine that there's a lot of also sentiment like this of abandonment, of not the love that we wanted to have. But poetry is also therapeutic, and it helps you. It helps you. Like keeping a journal is therapeutic, and poetry helps you to bring out. I thank your courage to share this with us. It's very courageous. Thank you for sharing this with us. Okay, I love you, my Patricia, my student from when did you graduate? Oh, I can't hear you, but when did you graduate?
77.
77. So that's more than 40 years ago. My student, I keep up with many of my students from this, Patricia. I love you. Un abrazo. Sí,
Gracias.
sí. My heart breaks after hearing that. ¿Alguien
Now,
más, Roxanne?
Sí, we have Miss Molina Ileana.
Ileana Molina, otra mi alumna de Cigarroa High School.
Buenas tardes otra vez. Más que un poema, es un pensamiento. Lo escribí ahorita rapidito. Para mi mamá, me inspiré con todo lo que escuchamos, y a Misa Costa, entendemos, no todos hemos tenido a veces, o no todos tienen el ejemplo, ¿verdad? De una madre amorosa, cariñosa, y es difícil. Uno no se da cuenta hasta que conoce otros casos, porque siempre uno piensa mamá y es amor, compasión, ternura, y no siempre es así. Pero estamos con usted y muchas gracias por compartirnos eso. Me tocó mi corazón mucho. Y lamento que haya pasado por esa experiencia, porque no, nadie debería pasar por algo así. Pero bueno, les comparto mi pensamiento rapidito. Es un pensamiento, una carta para mi madre y dice, madre, no sabes cómo recuerdo tu famosa frase, ya verás cuando tengas hijos. Hoy en día, esta frase tiene un valor totalmente diferente. No sabes cuánto agradezco tu constante esfuerzo. Ahora es que entiendo que ser madre no es tarea fácil. Ahora es que entiendo que el valor de una madre es incalculable. Gracias, madre, por todo tu amor, paciencia y consejos. Espero poder ser para mis hijos la mitad de tu ejemplo. Feliz día, querida madre.
Gracias. Me encantó cuando tengas hijos. Tengo aquí, estoy leyendo un chat en el chat que María Gómez se tiene que ir. Es
Sí,
la
parece que
siguiente.
quiere
María,
seguir, sí.
sí, María Gómez, que te conozco, María Solís también. Otra alumna de Martin High School. Bienvenida, María.
Gracias, pero yo ah, es un pensamiento que de felicitaciones que se vino a la cabeza ahorita que estábamos en los 10 minutos.
Está bien, para eso es.
Dice, primero que todo, quiero felicitar a mi madre, que en 10 días cumple 91 años. Ella es una persona fuerte, que siempre trabajó hasta los 80 años. Ella ha estado siempre a la voluntad de Dios. Ella me ha enseñado que la vida con Dios todo es posible. Quiero felicitar a todas las madres que dedican tiempo a sus hijos, que los ayudan, que los protegen, que los guían a tener raíces fuertes, porque hoy son ramas y mañana serán tronco. Pero no dejaré pasar a esos hombre-madre, como le digo yo a ellos. Los quiero felicitar también, porque tuvieron la responsabilidad de cuidar a sus hijos solos por diferentes circunstancias de la vida que fuesen. Gracias, madres, y gracias, hombre-madre, por estar allí cuando sus hijos lo necesitaban, porque para mí se merecen mi respeto. Y esto.
Gracias, María. Muy lindos pensamientos y eso de hombre-madre, que algunos hombres toman el papel de madres. Claro, no hablamos de eso, pero cuando es madre suplente, sí, también tuve algunos alumnos, no muchos, fíjate, pero sí algunos que le escribían a su papá que sirvió de madre y padre para ellos. Acuérdate, bueno, yo he dicho, I was in high school 39 years, teaching high school 39 years. So I had a lot of experience. So I had a lot of students. And yes, some of them wrote to their fathers who had been a father and a mother to them. And I'm glad I do it in Spanish because the 4 poems have been in Spanish. Well, Mando's was Spanglish. But do we have any more poems, Roxanne? Anybody else who wants to say the poems?
No, nobody else.
Nobody else wants to
no.
say the poems. I thank you so much for being here. It's a small audience, but it's a very select, and some people had to leave and they said goodbye, but they had a good time. And I don't know if June, I don't know, relationships are hard. Those are the words of my granddaughter, Evie. When she was 13, she told me, I asked, well, Evie, do you have a boyfriend? And she says, Grandma, relationships are hard. And I can say that for mothers too. Relationships are hard, and we're human, and we are trying our best to survive, and it's not always what we would like. But this mothers, it was very important that we talk about it, and those poems we read. Lucinda, I'm so sorry we didn't. Can you talk now? Can you hear us? But we can't hear you. Yes, no, it's okay. I'm sorry. That was a beautiful poem. And your voice is so beautiful. I always tell her, Faridun married you for that beautiful voice. Remember that? I would always joke like that, and it's true because she has the sweetest voice. And I thank everybody for being here. It's 7:23, and I say goodbye. If anybody wants to say something, I can't hear you.
Rosa Maria, can you hear me?
Yes, now I can hear you.
Okay. Well, I just want to say thank you very much. This is the first time that I participate in one of these workshops. Rosa Maria and I serve on the board of the library for many, many years. And at our last board meeting of the library advisory meeting, she talked about, you know, that she does this, and I was very impressed. I thank you, Rosa Maria, for your commitment, you know, to the love of poetry and literature that you have. And I've been crying, okay? I haven't heard poetry like this in a long time. And like you said, the Spanish even has a lot, I don't know, more to it.
Más emotivo. El
Yes.
español es muy emotivo.
Yes. So thank you so much, all of you. And I'm very happy that I took the time to participate. And thank you, Roxanne, for helping me to log on this afternoon. And so this was beautiful, beautiful. It's making me think. In the 10 minutes, I didn't write a poem, but I just wrote words and words and words as I was thinking about my mom and, you know, all the wonderful memories that we all have, you know, good or bad, whatever they are, they're all wonderful memories. And so thank you so much. I just wanted to say that. And Rosa Maria, I appreciate you. And you know, you're a wonderful friend. And I think that you deserve a big, big round of applause and
Thank you.
congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I also want to thank Roxanne and the whole library staff for helping me put this. I could not do it without you, without your help. So you've been, tell Miss Solis, and of course you, Roxanne, who are the liaison.
Yes.
with the
I have a
system.
lot to boast about at our next meeting.
Yes, please post about it.
Definitely.
It takes, and thank you to all the participants. Patricia left, Armando had to leave, of course, but, and Mary Sue left, but thank you so much for all. Ileana, thank you. And Lucinda, I'm sorry, we couldn't hear your beautiful voice.